After we told everyone I was pregnant, my sister-in-law's little scheme to embarrass me at my husband's party totally backfired. She ended up getting arrested and divorced. I'm 29 now, and I've been married to Daniel for the past 7 years. Life with him has been great, except for one constant problem, his sister Elena, who seems to drag in all the negativity. Now, don't get me wrong, I actually liked Elena when we first met. But it didn't take long before I started to see her true colors. Over time, it became clear that she was toxic, manipulative, and just flat-out draining to be around. Knowing how she is, I've spent years trying to stay on her good side and avoid conflict. Back when Daniel was 17, he dated one of Elena's best friends, but they broke up because he felt pushed into the relationship by Elena. Then, when he turned 23 and happened to be single again, Elena tried to pair him up with another one of her friends, but he wasn't interested. She threw a fit and ran crying to their parents, saying she wanted him to marry someone she approved of. But honestly, their parents barely gave her a second thought during that whole argument. When Daniel and I started dating and eventually fell for each other, his parents were really supportive, but Elena stayed cold and distant with me from the very beginning. Any time I was around, she'd randomly bring up Daniel's ex-girlfriends for no reason, talking about how great they were doing and how he should reach out to them. This went on for quite a while. Daniel noticed it too and even told her to stop bringing up his exes all the time. It wasn't just me who picked up on it, other people could see how weird she was being. After that, Elena would get all worked up and start making fun of me, saying I was jealous and that Daniel could do better than me. Whenever Daniel's parents invited us over for dinner, Elena made it a point to, accidentally, run into one of his exes that day and then invite them along, pretending it was just a polite gesture. She doesn't follow me on social media, but she's clearly watching. I always see her pop up first on my Instagram stories. I've got a public profile, so I noticed she was always one of the first viewers. And if a guy left a comment on one of my photos, she'd go straight to Daniel complaining that I was posting inappropriate pictures. Daniel and I actually found her complaints pretty ridiculous and would laugh them off. When Daniel and I decided to move in together, Elena tried to talk him out of it. She told him I had all kinds of flaws and that she could find someone way better for him. That really stung, especially since I had always been nothing but kind to her. But once we got engaged, her behavior went from bad to worse. When we announced our engagement, everyone clapped and cheered, but Elena just sat there, quiet and distant. Then out of nowhere, she jumped out of her seat and walked out of the room, leaving everyone confused. Later, she called Daniel, sobbing and yelling that she was hurt because she didn't find out about the engagement before everyone else. She claimed she was the closest person to him and should have been the first to know. Not long after, she sent me this borderline creepy message, telling me how I should treat her brother, like she was still the only woman in his life. I honestly got chills reading it. I didn't even bother replying and just left it on read, which I'm sure ticked her off even more. From then on, every time she saw me, she acted like I didn't even exist. Strangely enough, she still inserted herself into all the wedding planning. She came dress shopping and even showed up at my bridal shower. Even though both Daniel and his mom called her out several times, she kept complaining about everything, making it clear she hated my choices. It didn't stop. One day, Elena overheard me talking about centerpieces with Daniel's mom and immediately started mocking me, saying I had no taste and this is why she wanted her brother to marry someone better. That was the last straw for me. I snapped and told her straight up that she was no longer invited to our wedding. I was done with the insults and the constant criticism. She looked completely shocked, like it had never occurred to her that I might stand up to her. Even my mother-in-law was furious at her and backed me up. After that, Elena called Daniel again, whining that I embarrassed her and saying he needed to control me since I was going to be his wife. But Daniel stood his ground and told her he supported my decision. Unless she apologized, she wouldn't be welcome at the wedding. Eventually, she sent me a text that sounded kind of sincere. But I was so drained from all the wedding prep that I didn't even respond. I just left it unread again. I had no energy left for her drama. Still, I let her come to the wedding because I didn't want to give her another excuse to talk trash about us later. Everyone else came dressed beautifully, wearing the soft pinks and pastels we picked out for the theme. But Elena showed up looking like she was headed to a funeral, black dress down to the floor, complete with a veil. To say we were stunned is an understatement. She walked around the whole place acting like she was mourning the loss of her brother to another woman. During the reception, Daniel pulled her aside and asked her why she was dressed like that. She turned it around and claimed she had every right to wear what she wanted, and said I was controlling. Her theatrics kept going, and eventually, both of Daniel's parents told her to leave. It was embarrassing for me, to say the least. After that day, I made a decision to keep my distance from her. When I gave birth to our son, Nate, I made it clear that Elena wasn't allowed anywhere near him. She tried to argue, but thankfully Daniel's parents were on my side. They completely understood why I wanted her far away from our newborn. 2 years ago, Elena had a miscarriage while she was with her boyfriend, Mark, and it hit her really hard. That was a tough time for everyone involved. Daniel and I felt bad for her, especially since we were already raising our own child. So, we decided to show a little compassion and started letting her spend some time around Nate. Even though she'd always treated me poorly, she was surprisingly sweet with our son, which honestly took me off guard. At first, it really seemed like Elena had changed, but before long, she was back to her old ways. She's constantly complaining about how tough her life is, acting like nothing ever goes right for her, and always blames old friends or former bosses for messing things up. Over time, I started to notice something. She's never wrong in her own mind, no matter what. Elena loves playing the victim and tries to get people to feel sorry for her, but when it comes to arguments, she rarely admits to doing anything wrong. Earlier this year, she decided to get married and invited just about everyone, except for us. Given that things between us had seemed a bit better lately, Daniel was honestly shocked when we realized we hadn't gotten an invite. When we asked her about it, she said straight out that I wasn't welcome because I'd disrupt her big day. I was stunned. I'd never done anything to her to deserve that, so I called and asked why she'd think I'd cause a problem. That's when Elena admitted she'd worn all black to our wedding on purpose, and now she was worried I might pull something similar at hers, so she wanted me nowhere near the place. I was furious, and I told Daniel plain and clear, this was just more of her manipulative nonsense. After talking it over with his parents, Daniel told Elena that if she was going to exclude me, then none of us would be coming, and they wouldn't be footing the bill for the wedding either. That set her off. She burst into tears and immediately blamed me for ruining everything. But her fiancé Mark actually stood up and told her that blaming me wasn't fair, especially since she had openly admitted what she did wrong. Still, Elena tried to downplay the whole thing, saying I should just get over it because our wedding was so long ago anyway. Not long after, she reached out to me with an apology, asking me to forgive her, mainly because her parents-in-law were still refusing to help pay for the wedding. As much as it pains me to say it, Elena can turn on the charm when she wants something, and she can be pretty convincing, too. I decided to let it go and move forward, so I forgave her. Her wedding to Mark actually went off without a hitch, and everything looked beautiful. We all attended and had a good time together. But not even 6 months later, Elena showed up at our place, ranting about how her marriage was already falling apart. Daniel and I let her stay for a few days while she went on and on about Mark and how terrible things were between them. They seemed to be having trouble getting pregnant, and Elena kept putting all the blame on Mark. When I tried to talk to her about it, she insisted it was completely his fault and refused to consider anything else. When she wasn't complaining about her husband, she'd start obsessing over our lives, twisting small things into something bigger or making up issues out of thin air. Take this one example. Most mornings, I hit the gym before heading to work. If I'm running behind, I bring my work clothes with me so I can shower and change after my workout. Elena noticed this and started asking all sorts of questions, why I was showering, why I needed the gym, stuff like that. I didn't think much of it, and just told her I liked staying in shape and didn't want to show up at work all sweaty. She'd just nod, sometimes licking her lips strangely, and move on. One afternoon at lunch, my mother-in-law was telling us about one of her friends who was getting divorced. Apparently, the woman had caught her husband cheating and walked away with half his assets. Out of nowhere, Elena cuts her off and turns to Daniel, asking if the two of us had signed a prenup before getting married. We all kind of froze and stared at her like, "What?" We stopped eating completely, and she kept looking at Daniel like I wasn't even there. Daniel, in his usual blunt way, told her we hadn't signed one because we both earned decent money and trust each other. That's when Elena scoffed and said something about how anyone can be blindsided and that cheating happens all the time these days. I was pretty offended, so I asked her to explain what she was really trying to say. And that's when she straight up accused me, said I was probably seeing someone else because I always had a change of clothes with me, and as Daniel's sister, she felt it was her duty to speak up. I was completely floored by her accusations. Thankfully, my in-laws walked in right then and tried to shut it down. They told her she had no business meddling in other people's marriages. But Elena didn't let up. She said she was just trying to protect her brother, and then made a disgusting joke about whether our son Nate was even Daniel's child because he didn't really look like him. I swear, I saw the rage rise in Daniel's face. I'd never seen him that furious in all my life. He looked Elena right in the eye and told her that she didn't deserve to be a mother, and if she ever did have a child, that baby would be better off in heaven than with someone like her. Elena's jaw dropped. She was completely stunned. My in-laws didn't say a word. They just sat there in silence while Daniel told her exactly what he thought. He called her shameless, told her she was trying to ruin everyone else's happiness because she had none in her own life. He said she was a lazy freeloader while her husband worked nonstop, and that she had no right to judge me. Daniel kept going, told her to stop projecting her own failures onto other people and to focus on fixing her own marriage instead of questioning ours. Elena broke down crying, sobbing uncontrollably. She looked to Mark, probably expecting him to defend her, but he just sat there, completely quiet. It's rare for my husband to lose control like that, but that day he was barely holding it together. Elena got up suddenly and rushed to the bathroom, clearly shaken, while my husband was still seething. I gently touched his hand, trying to calm him, and thankfully my mother-in-law stepped in to help settle him down. He apologized to me for what his sister had said about our son, and I just nodded, understanding how frustrating she can be. After everything Elena had put us through, I was honestly relieved to see Daniel finally stand up for me in front of everyone. Once he'd cooled down, he gave Mark a brief apology but completely ignored Elena. After that lunch, we went back to having zero communication with her. And honestly, it wasn't just me she was affecting. Her behavior was weighing on my husband too. We blocked her on everything so that if she ever wanted to speak, she'd have to reach out herself. Later that day, my in-laws pulled us aside and said they believed Elena had really crossed the line this time. They'd never seen their usually calm son lose his temper like that, and it was clear Elena had pushed him too far. It's been about a year since that day, and to be honest, life's been peaceful without her in it. Then, 2 months ago, I found out I was pregnant, and we hadn't even been trying. It was unexpected, but my husband and I felt incredibly lucky and grateful. We thought the best time to share the news would be during Daniel's birthday celebration. His parents were throwing a big backyard party in his honor, wanting to make it extra special. They invited close family and a few dear friends. Somehow, word got out, and Elena decided to show up. When we saw her, Daniel and I both were stunned. We hadn't expected her at all. She walked up, gave Daniel a hug, and told him how much she missed him and how sorry she was for their last argument. Daniel took my hand and told his sister that if she was going to apologize, she needed to say it to me, since I was the one she'd insulted. Elena looked at me, nodded, and gave an apology. She said she'd been seeing a therapist for a while and had realized just how wrong she'd been to treat me the way she did. I didn't believe everything she said, but I nodded anyway. I wanted to stay polite in front of everyone. Since it was Daniel's celebration, my in-laws came over to check on us and quietly told us that if we felt uncomfortable, they'd ask her to leave. They had no idea she was coming. But Daniel didn't want a scene, so we decided to let it go and move on, for now. What felt strange, though, was how cheerful and upbeat Elena was the whole time, laughing, mingling, acting like a completely different person. She'd mentioned therapy, so I figured maybe she really had changed, and I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. When it came time to cut the cake, Daniel gave a little speech. He spoke from the heart about how grateful he was for another year, and how lucky he felt to spend it with someone like me. His words made me blush with joy. It reminded me of our early days, how in love we were back then, and how that love had only grown stronger. After the cake, Daniel and I decided it was time to share our big news. We smiled and told everyone we were expecting a baby, and at first, there was silence before the room burst into cheers. My mom ran up and hugged me, crying tears of joy. Phil, my father-in-law, wiped tears from his own eyes and gave Daniel and me a heartfelt congratulations. Everyone seemed thrilled, asking about baby names and showering us with excitement. Everyone except Elena. She looked completely shocked, just froze, then turned away from us like she was annoyed. I figured maybe she was still processing the news and brushed it off, though a part of me worried she might try to ruin another one of our moments. Still, I got caught up chatting with friends and didn't think much of it right away. Later, I got up to help my in-laws with lunch, but my parents and Rick told me to sit down, that I shouldn't be on my feet. So I stayed put and waited for Daniel to bring me a plate. Elena walked up to me, all smiles, acting like she was thrilled about the baby. She said she wanted to be the one to serve me lunch, said it was her way of making up for all the terrible things she'd done in the past. She handed me a plate, still grinning, and turned to walk away. I was just about to start eating when I noticed something that made me stop in my tracks. There was shrimp on the plate. I'm severely allergic to shrimp, and I was genuinely shocked she would bring me that. A little disappointed, I got up and went to fix myself a new plate. That's when Mark came over to congratulate me and asked why I hadn't eaten yet. I showed him the plate and told him Elena had probably made a mistake, giving me shrimp. Mark said not to worry, he loved shrimp, and he'd eat it instead. Then I could grab myself something else. I smiled, thanked him, and turned to walk away. But within 5 minutes, Mark was doubled over, gagging and vomiting all over his plate. The room went quiet as everyone watched him stumble from his chair, clearly in distress. Daniel and Elena both rushed to help him. Mark pointed to the plate, then clutched his throat. It was obvious something in that food had made him seriously sick. Then, right there in the middle of the gathering, Mark collapsed, and everyone gasped in horror. Elena ran to look at the dish, and her eyes went wide with shock. She looked directly at me and asked if I had given her husband that plate. I nodded. In the chaos, someone called for an ambulance, and Mark was rushed to the hospital. Elena was crying uncontrollably the whole time and kept glaring at me like it was my fault. Later, we were told Mark had been poisoned. Knowing that plate was meant for me, and that I'm carrying a baby, I nearly fainted. If I'd eaten what he did, it could have hurt me and the baby. Nobody else, not Daniel, not my in-laws, not my parents, knows this part yet. Since nobody could figure out exactly what was in the food that caused Mark to collapse like that, the police had to be called in to collect evidence from his plate. As I write this now, Mark's still in the hospital recovering. Elena stayed by his side overnight. Daniel and I have been answering non-stop phone calls from relatives trying to make sense of what happened to Mark and asking if anyone really tried to poison him. The whole ordeal has shaken my mother and father-in-law to their core. They're so rattled they decided to sleep over at our place, too afraid to go back to their own home for now. It's hard to understand how things took such a terrifying turn, especially when the day had been going so well. But the truth is, just thinking about how that plate was originally handed to me by Elena sends chills through my body. If there ends up being a full investigation, I know I'll have no choice but to tell the police exactly what happened. More than anything, though, I'm scared of what Elena might be capable of doing next. This whole thing makes me sick to my stomach, and not just because of what happened to Mark. I can't bring myself to be anywhere near her again, and I sure as hell won't let my children near her after this. If she really did try to poison me, that means she's crossed the line with no return. I hate that I was the one who gave that dish to Mark. I can't stop thinking about it. I may have unintentionally put his life in danger. Update 1. Wow. I'm overwhelmed by the thousands of responses I've received in just a few hours. I truly didn't expect so many people to respond. When I wrote my original post, my hands were literally trembling, and I still haven't been able to sleep. Even though I know Elena gave me that food, part of me still feels guilty that Mark was the one who ate it. I should have just tossed that plate in the trash the second I saw the shrimp. I don't know why I let him take it from me. I keep crying, thinking about what this might mean for Mark's future. My husband can tell something's deeply wrong. He hasn't left my side. He doesn't know everything yet. He thinks I'm just shaken up by the whole situation. Some of you mentioned I should sit everyone down and calmly tell them everything, and I agree. Even if not everyone believes me right away, I remembered that my in-laws have security cameras installed all around their property. Since the birthday party took place in their backyard, I'm almost certain the footage will show Elena handing me that plate. We're planning to have a serious talk tonight, and I'll update once we do. Update 2. We finally had that conversation, and honestly, I feel so grateful to have the kind of in-laws most people only dream of. Since Emil and Phil were already staying with us, we all sat down over dinner, just the four of us and Daniel, and I told them I had something really important to share. I took a deep breath before I began, feeling the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on me. Everyone leaned in quietly as I explained what took place during the party, how Elena had brought me a plate with shrimp, how Mark ended up eating it, and how it landed him in the hospital. As I told the story, I could see the shock on their faces. It mirrored exactly how I felt reliving it. Emil and Phil exchanged a glance, both clearly uneasy. Daniel's face shifted, his confusion slowly turning into something darker. I didn't hold anything back. I told them I was genuinely worried Elena might have meant to hurt me, and I brought up how this wasn't the first time she tried to cause problems. It was hard to say, especially with everything at stake for me and our unborn child, but I had to be honest. True to form, my mother-in-law didn't waste any time. She immediately suggested we check the security footage. Phil agreed without hesitation, understanding just how serious this might be. Daniel, on the other hand, stayed completely silent, his jaw clenched, processing every word. We pulled up the footage from their phone app right there at the table, and sure enough, the truth was plain as day. The camera showed Elena handing the plate directly to me, and then everything that followed after Mark ate from it. There was no way to explain it away, no room for doubt. The weight of what we saw hit all of us hard. Daniel sat there, struggling to control his anger, now fully realizing what his sister might have done. Emil and Phil looked heartbroken, totally horrified that their own daughter could be capable of something like this. We were all stunned, just sitting there trying to understand how and why she could go so far. This is serious, really serious. So my in-laws have decided they're going to turn the footage over to the police. Since Mark is the one who was harmed, it'll be up to him whether to press charges against Elena. Phil and Daniel are planning to visit Mark in the hospital once he's stronger to talk it through with him. But I can barely think about that moment without crying. I keep replaying it in my head, how I gave Mark that plate. I don't know how he's going to react when he finds out. I've been so worried about him that I can't eat, I can't sleep, I can barely function. I'll keep updating as things unfold. Update 3. Alright, folks. I'm back with an update at last. I know it's been about a month since my last update, but between being pregnant and everything else going on, it's been a lot to carry. First off, yes, Elena was arrested after the evidence came to light. My in-laws handed the security footage over to the police, and that was more than enough to get things moving. Elena didn't even try to deny it. She broke down crying and admitted to everything right away. When my husband sat down with Mark and told him what had really happened, Mark was completely blindsided, just as stunned as the rest of us. Daniel assured him that no matter what decision he made, he'd always be family. But he also gently encouraged Mark to consider pressing charges, because what Elena did was absolutely unforgivable. Once Mark had recovered enough to think clearly, he didn't just decide to press charges, he also filed for divorce. After that, Elena started calling my in-laws, crying and begging them to forgive her. As it turns out, she's pregnant too. She tried to guilt them into bailing her out by saying they needed to think about her unborn daughter, their future granddaughter. But Phil stood firm. He told her it was time she finally took responsibility for her actions, and that they were done making excuses for her. My Emil, on the other hand, is deeply heartbroken over what her daughter has done, but she knows this isn't something that can be swept under the rug. The police confirmed that Elena had tampered with the food. She meant to hurt me, but ended up poisoning her own husband instead. She's now facing several criminal charges, including endangering a life, causing bodily harm, and food tampering, which is considered a major offense. She even tried to twist things around, telling Mark that it was somehow all my fault, that I shouldn't have passed him my plate. Thankfully, Mark didn't fall for it. He's completely committed to holding her accountable. Her court hearings are starting soon, and to be honest, I don't see any way she's going to get out of this. /////////// For those of you asking, yes, my son and I are both doing okay. He has no idea what his aunt tried to do, and we want to keep it that way, at least for now. But Daniel and I have talked about it, and we both agree, when the time is right, we'll sit him down and tell him the truth. It's not going to be an easy conversation, but it's important. He deserves to understand the kind of danger we narrowly avoided. As for my pregnancy, I've been going in for ultrasounds every 2 weeks, just as my doctor recommended. We've decided not to find out the baby's gender. We want it to be a surprise when the time comes. My parents have been extra protective ever since the whole ordeal with Elena. They've been urging me to get therapy, worried that the stress might affect me or the baby's development. And honestly, I think they're right. Even though I try to act like everything's fine, I've developed this deep fear of being poisoned again. I can't eat anything unless I made it myself, and I've stopped eating at restaurants or accepting food from others. It's not logical, I know, but the fear is real. Thankfully, Daniel understands and has been incredibly supportive. I'm hopeful that, with his help, I can eventually let go of this fear. / Update 4. It's been 8 months since I last shared anything. Elena is now behind bars. She was found guilty on all charges. I didn't go to her court hearings, but my in-laws did, and they kept me in the loop. They told me how, in front of the judge, Elena confessed to years of jealousy and resentment toward me. She said she had always hoped that one of her close friends would end up marrying Daniel, and when he started dating me, a total outsider, she just couldn't handle it. She admitted she used to go out of her way to make me feel unwelcome from the very beginning. What finally pushed her over the edge, according to her, was when we announced our pregnancy at Daniel's birthday party. She had planned to reveal her pregnancy at the same party, and she felt like I stole her moment. She'd already had one miscarriage, and this new pregnancy meant everything to her. Fueled by jealousy and pregnancy hormones, she mixed a bit of rat poison into the food she handed me. She said she only meant for me to end up in the hospital, that she never wanted to hurt the baby or do any real damage. She begged the court for a lighter sentence, claiming it was all just a huge mistake, that she never thought I'd give her plate to her own husband. But the judge wasn't buying it. The verdict was firm. She'll be away for a very long time. As for Mark, he's finally free. Now that the divorce is finalized, we've been seeing him more often. We try to include him in family gatherings whenever we can. At one point I sat down with him and apologized, again, for giving him that plate. He told me it was never my fault. Still, I broke down in tears, confessing that I'd replayed that moment in my head so many times, wishing I could go back and do it all differently. It means so much to see him doing well now. And as for Daniel and me, well, we've added a beautiful baby girl to our family. Her arrival has brought so much joy and healing into our lives, even after everything we've been through. Our son Nate is loving being a big brother. He's sweet, gentle, and protective of his baby sister. Watching the two of them bond has filled our home with so much warmth. Through it all, our parents, both mine and Daniel's, have stood by us, offering love, strength, and support. Thank you to everyone who's followed our story. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell. There are plenty more real-life stories like this you won't want to miss.